do you want to get married? You're going to be sent on a mission and your husband and kids can't come. What are you going to do then? I was like,
this was like the only choice that you could make in terms of like defining your future. Are you going to be happy with it 10 years, 20 years down the road? I started a master's program in OSHA.
That's crazy.
I really did. I
can't imagine you walking into factories with like the hard hat and the vest.
I went as far as interviewing for internships. I accepted an offer.
Okay.
I was already in line. It was going to be a paid internship. I had my offer letter, like everything was set.
Hello everyone, I'm Maria Fernanda Martinez-Donaus and I am the Executive Director of Real Progress. And today I am here with my good friend Sarah Chavez, who is here to talk about her experience going through college, earning her Bachelor's of Science in Public Health, and what she hopes to do next and how she's thinking about it. She's, an awesome person, and I'm really excited for y'all to get to know her as well. And so we're going to go ahead and start this conversation. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your background before we go into all of the college conversation.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me today and letting me be part of this podcast. I think that it's really exciting what the work that you're guiding and spearheading here in Brownsville. So a little bit about myself, kind of like you mentioned, my name is Sarah Chavez and I am currently a graduate student, but my background stems from public health. So I am a Brownsville born and raised student. I attended Hannah High School.
Go Eagles.
And yes, go Eagles. And then I graduated in 2017. That same year in the fall, I attended Texas A&M University. And so I started my bachelor's initially in biomedical science because I really had that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I really was like that STEM super focused student that I thought was going to be involved in medicine and medical school. And like that's what I had envisioned initially.
It's like a whole other Sarah that I have not met.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like why it's really important for a lot of people to maybe consider how paths can change during your journey, especially when it comes to academics and real life, not just what looks good on paper. And so from, I think after it was first year, my second semester, I decided that it wasn't for me, especially because I was not ready for that big transition of what it's like to leave the Valley, even to still be in state. I mean, it wasn't what you would maybe consider drastic in the sense of leaving completely your somewhat social circle, but it was still uncomfortable in the sense of big change. So I attended that fall. It was fall 2017 is when I started my undergraduate degree at Texas A&M, and it was until the second semester where I decided to switch gears and I got into public health, mostly because it still is related in the sense of serving communities, not directly through medicine, but in the understanding of One Health and what it means to have that integrated care and the importance of literacy in terms of all aspects of health.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I started my passion for understanding what capacity I wanted to work in with others. And my gears started turning and I started to really realize, I think, that what you are studying and investing your time in is important because it's going to be part of who you are. And I think that's part of like the identity portion that I was trying to figure out.
So you mentioned that you started off in biomedical or thinking you wanted to do medicine. Can you tell me like how you first started thinking, not about a major necessarily, but about college? Did you always think you were going to go to college? Was this like the norm in your family, or was it something that was kind of like, I think I'll go? Like what was kind of your thought process and your background with that?
Yeah, so I'm a second generation college student. My parents, both of them did attend. They went through that initial learning curve of kind of going through the rough transition from living in Mexico to coming to the United States. So my family background does stem from immigrants and that acculturation process. So I think because of that reason, they always promoted education and the importance of that being your way out, so to speak. That was ingrained in me at a very young age. And so when I first started thinking about college, I think they start maybe eighth grade, kind of like planting the seed of like, hey, dual enrollment, start registering. And so I will say that I'm blessed in the sense of my mom works in education. And so because she had that, I would say background, but insight also of understanding what the system academically looks like, she was able to anticipate enrolling me and getting me to that part of my academic career where I could consider the next steps. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. And so for me, I was fortunate to have that opportunity and start those dual enrollment credits as soon as ninth grade started, which in itself is good financially because it covers that credit through your high school experience, but at the same time, it's forcing you to maybe have a lot more hindsight or insight into what you want to do afterwards, graduating with all those credits that then transition to your degree, undergraduate. And that was sort of, I would say, the problem in a sense of that fast-paced environment that
you gotta hit the ground running as soon as you get there.
In a lot of ways, yeah, I would say, and it left very little wiggle room once I graduated high school and started that degree, where I couldn't really change my mind too much. So the fact that I even switched majors during that first year of my undergraduate degree was stressful in itself because you have your advisors telling you, hey, so, you have to take X amount of courses and that's counting towards your financial aid. And I was under a scholarship. And so that stress really can take a toll. And I think that has been the biggest experience or learning moment for me to kind of recognize like it's important for you to not rush into things and not let pressure influence the decisions that you make just because you want to not fall behind or perceive whatever hiccup you think would like set you back.
Yeah. So I'm going to explain dual enrollment just a little bit for the audience because I know that we're talking about this as if it's super common knowledge, and you talk about your mom having insider knowledge into this. But dual enrollment is a federal program that is implemented by the states where students can earn college credit while in high school. And in the Valley, it's usually done through TSC or through UTRGV, depending on the classes. So students are taking college level courses in high school. However, this sounds really cool and there's a lot of really good things about it. But what Zara was referencing is that there are financial implications to this, and there are also, I think, career implications to it. One of the things that we've seen with some students is, for example, they don't realize that this is taking up part of their Texas grant or part of their federal aid because you are already taking college courses and you are taking them for free, but it's coming from your financial aid. And so when you talk about being on a scholarship and feeling pressured to graduate within a certain time, it's because with financial aid, sometimes there are limits, right, on how many credit hours or how many years you can take and use that financial aid. So if you started in ninth grade, that really left you with like very little wiggle room, like you said, to actually be able to change your mind. The other thing we've seen is that when students come in as like a sophomore or a junior, you have like 2 summers to intern or to try things out before you can really decide what your career is. And sometimes you just need a little more time. You were probably like 18 and a sophomore, right? So 21 by the time you graduated. That's really young to have figured everything out, right? So what were some of the things that had maybe guided you towards thinking you wanted to do medicine? And then if you could tell us about the moment or the moments that led you to realize this isn't going to be for me.
So kind of what I shared about my background in terms of my family being immigrants and having that hardworking mindset and wanting to excel. A lot of our decisions, I would say, have been influenced by financial stability and the idea of what that means. And so attending a high school that is STEM and that does promote, science, engineering, those science-based routes, I would say, I think it led or started there initially, where it's usually, the careers that you typically hear about, which is
Mm-hmm.
nursing, being a doctor, maybe optometry you hear about.
Yeah.
But, I didn't really have much of an idea of what else I could branch out to.
All the
And
options or
oh, yeah, I
possibilities.
really did not know what careers could look like outside of that
Mm-hmm.
traditional STEM sense. So going into it, my mom would tell me, well, I've heard nurses earn well, and I've heard medical school can be covered depending on the scholarship that you get. So,
That's
just
interesting.
yeah. And so, it's the decisions that I've made were aligning with the idea of wanting to not only be able to, I guess, be financially stable for myself, but be the breadwinner in a sense. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not as simple as saying, oh, the finances were the primary reason, because it's almost like a loaded concept, because it also comes with the implication of your cultural identity and you representing your family. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I would be safe to say in saying that a lot of us here in the valley feel that
Yeah.
sort of pressure of wanting to make your parents proud, make yourself proud, especially because, like, being second gen, that means we were given opportunities they weren't. And so I wanted to really capitalize on that. But I think it's important to not make decisions that hurt you more than they help. And so when I first, started that STEM medical school track, I didn't realize that there was going to be a even bigger learning curve. And for context, I think it's important for people to recognize, yes, science-based classes or courses do require a lot more study time. That's something you always have to take into account.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you don't have the resources or the time to attend tutoring. Sometimes the groundwork that is important during that sensitive period during high school is not enough to push
Yeah.
you to make that leap and to excel to the upper level courses. And unfortunately for me, I found it very difficult to navigate the stress of moving away and then being pressured to make that career decision. And like you said, I was also expected to do internships. And so I kind of just had to take a step back and realize that at that point in my life, medicine and medical school did not make sense for me, especially because I really didn't even know who I was. That identity portion of, like, who
Yeah.
am I, what am I doing, and what is my motivation behind all this?
It's one of the things that I find so hard is that we're expecting, and we joke about uncooked brains,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, your brain doesn't finish developing until you're 25. And we expect students who are 18 or 19 to make these really big decisions about what they want to do with the rest of their lives, because that's also how, and correct me if I'm wrong, but how it's presented to you, right? Like, you're making this choice and you're kind of stuck with it, right? No one talks about, hey, you can change your major, or hey, even if you graduate with a certain major, there's lots of things you can do with that, right? So there's a lot of pressure to make that choice. And I think one of the things that we realized quickly while working with students is that there's not a lot of guidance behind how to make sure that that's a choice that is not just a financially stable one, which I don't think people are financially literate enough to even know what that
Exactly.
entails.
Loans.
Um, not just loans, like medical school is so expensive.
Yeah.
And your mom was probably meaning well with saying you could get a scholarship, but those are super rare for medical school.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah, it will make a lot of money, but you also have to invest a lot into that. But also, like, to find a career or a major or something to study that aligns with who you are as an individual and what you like and what you care about. We often tell our students who come in saying they want to be doctors, like, are you ready to sacrifice for the next 10 years, right? Time, sleep, going out, meeting people, all of these things, because that's really what it's going to take. And for some people, the passion is there and they really want to do this and that makes sense for them. But then for a lot of them, they're like, oh no, I just thought this was the only career where I could, like, make a living, right? And make money and make my parents proud. So I totally hear what you're saying about, like, you didn't even know who you were and you were expected to make this big choice. what do you think were some of the things that helped you move towards public health? Like, was it a class? Was it meeting someone? Like, how did you hear about the major?
So at that point, when during my second semester, I decided realistically because I couldn't keep up. I think it was like maybe one of the biochem courses or something that would,
Notoriously hard and difficult.
but also it's like on the scheme of like course loads, that's like the easy one
Oh,
and
no.
the on the grand scheme. So clearly, and for context, in high school, I am proud to say like I was valedictorian of my graduating
Yeah.
class. And so I think a lot of it also comes with that stigma of the expectation.
Like, I can handle anything.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
or oh, I worked hard enough, and if you work hard enough, then you can make it.
Yeah.
And there's misconceptions with that because sometimes it's not just about the hard work.
About the resources and the access.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
so I basically went to my advisor that during that second semester and spoke to her and was honest. And at that point in my life, I remember feeling a lot of shame in a way because it's that recognition of feeling like I let myself down or like I was not able to perform the way that I was expected to. And so it takes a lot for you to be able to, like you said, come to terms with who you are and what you want to be and decide, ultimately I want to do something that I'm still interested in and is not guided strictly by financial responsibilities or decisions. So I learned about public health, and it's, like I mentioned, still aligning with the idea of wanting to serve others. I think ultimately that was my goal. I want to serve the community. I want to become educated.
Helpful.
Yeah, I want to learn how to create a system or be part of a system that helps other people. And so my advisor kind of went through I guess, a little bit more career counseling. These are the tracks, these are your options. This is a little wiggle room that you have given what you've already invested in terms of your courses. Again, like you said, I was already considered, I think, a sophomore. And so I didn't have much wiggle room, but I am fortunate to have found that path that really aligned with who I was and my interests instead of just taking like a random degree. And I think you make a good point when you comment that sometimes creating a narrower route for yourself is not always the best option because then it gives you, very little time to do a turnaround and to even go through that harder process of having to
Yeah.
undo some of the decisions you make.
Yeah. And I think I want to go back to something you said in that conversation about the expectations that also come when you succeed, right? Being valedictorian is not an easy task. At Hannah, not an easy task, right? It's I know there are large class sizes, so it's a lot of students you're competing with. You were taking hard classes, and it does make you feel like you can handle anything with enough hard work. And that can be really, really hard as a mentality to take into a more challenging space or into a space that is very new and different for you, right? So I know you talked about the transition into, and you were at College Station?
Yes, so it's A&M and College Station.
And so a lot of our students end up going to Austin or College Station, maybe even Houston for school. And I remember hearing when I was in high school, and I'm a few years older, right? So I don't know if the culture changed enough in 4 years, but one of the things I often heard is, people leave all the time, but they come back right away, right? They don't last over there. They don't finish, right? And the data shows that a lot of our students go to UT, go to Texas A&M, but they come back and finish here because that transition is so hard, right? So what were some of the things, maybe that belief, right, that hard work was everything, but maybe other things also played a factor in like that transition for you. So can you talk a little bit about what made moving away hard or what made staying away hard, and then what kept you there? What allowed you to finish?
What also played into the experience of my transition being difficult, I would say, is that family component of our culture.
What do you mean? We're
Like,
not family
you
people.
don't see your parents every day almost? Every weekend, carne asadas, or I think that's a big part of our human experience, and having to make such a big change.
Yeah.
maybe at first you are clouded by excitement and, the idea of something
Oh,
new.
and the Aggies do the orientation
Yeah,
big and everything's exciting.
the culture
Mm-hmm.
change, and at first it's like, oh, this is going to be something great, but ultimately when you are in the face of adversity, when you're stressed, you tend to rely on your social support, and the fact that that distance, even just being 6 hours away, can be such a change. I don't think that I anticipated the culture shock like you said. I think I
Well,
was
College Station is, not Brownsville.
yeah, for sure. But I think it's also like part of that naive mindset
Mm,
of like, oh, you know what? It'll be great. Like, it's kind of wanting to see the positive side that
mm-hmm.
kind of is talked about, almost romanticized, I would say. I think college has many facets to it, but
Yeah.
one of it really is that ability to undergo stressful situations and circumstances, because you're going through a period where you're dedicating yourself, like you said, to
Yeah.
your studies and pretty much making that your lifestyle.
And the
Um,
whole thing is stressful. I don't think it's even like, oh, there are stressful moments. I think it's a constant level of like stress management that you're undergoing.
yeah, so I think that one, I was not necessarily prepared in terms of having the adequate stress management or coping skills. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even think that at that point in my life I knew what that was. I now in hindsight can see the value of speaking about what mental health means,
Mm,
and stigma surrounding like what one should
yeah.
experience. I think that everyone has a unique um, firsthand experience, not just in college, but with their own personal journey. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one of the things that also I found difficult to accept was the identity component, because when you are starting your college career, you often tie that to your identity and it being a reflection of yourself. And it's kind of where that self-worth component comes in, because the academic performance then gets tied, and you see it as a reflection of who you are. And so
Mm-hmm.
that negative association between, oh, I didn't perform well enough, I'm not worthy, or oh, I'm not excelling the way that I would
I'm
have hoped.
used to.
Yeah, the way that I'm used to, what's going on, it
Yeah.
kind of causes like that disconnect and that confusion. So I think that was a big part of my experience, and wondering, well, is it me or what's the issue? There was like a lot of clouded experiences, I would say, that shaped that
Mm-hmm.
initial part of my college journey. Granted that because of the experience, I
Yeah.
literally had like I was forced to graduate in 3 years
Yes.
because of the scholarship.
That's so accelerated for all the things that have to happen and all the processing that has to go on. There's so much in your experience that I don't know if this would like make you feel better or worse, but like now there's data to back it up that it's
Mm-hmm.
not just you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things you mentioned is having the almost wrong expectations of what was to come in college, right? So one of the things that people have been looking at in studies and in academia is if we just tell people it's going to be bad, right? Or that to expect to have a hard time, would that actually make it better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think so many students go into college thinking this is the best time of your life. This is going to be amazing. You're going to graduate on time, right? With the degree that you want. And you're going to get A's like you were used to in high school. And then you hit college and you get your first B, you get your first C, you get your first D. And you're like, what do I do here, right? Like, I was not prepared for navigating this because I didn't experience it in high school, right? I imagine to get to be, a top student at the school, you couldn't get B's, right? Not really. They were weighted heavier, or you got, extra points from things. And you get to college and that's not really how it works anymore. So, do you think having more aligned expectations would have been something that helped you? Or do you think it was going to be bad regardless?
I think that would have probably helped reduce some of like that isolated experience that
Mm,
I felt was unique to
you
what I
thought it
was
was just
facing.
you.
Yeah, and I think um, there's been a big change in how we talk about stigma and mental health, and I think now we're more open about
Mm-hmm.
it. Back then, it was pre-COVID, so that was a big factor as well. I think that has influenced the way now we talk about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that
Free TikTok too.
Yeah, sorry, I cannot get on TikTok, man. It hooks me. It's good, but the point being, now there's access to content about mental health and what people experience, right? And so that was also like another big consideration, that I felt that I was the only one, and I felt that because of the way that I had performed previously, I didn't feel comfortable like reaching out and saying, hey, you know what, this is hard for me. Like, I'm going through a difficult experience and it's tough, and because I didn't want to come back home and I guess be part of that data, I pushed through it, and I graduated, ironically, on the semester that COVID broke out. So I didn't even get to walk the stage.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I graduated spring 2020, and it was almost like
that's the worst time to graduate.
Yeah, it was almost ironic because it's kind of like, here I am, like with this idea of what it means to achieve this degree,
pushing hard with that image in mind.
Yeah, in the face of a pandemic, it kind of puts things into perspective as well.
Yeah,
in terms of like,
did this even matter?
Exactly. So I think that in a way that was also a blessing in disguise, because I think it made me realize, like, okay, if our time is limited and things can change in a minute or in a month, what do I want to invest my time in? Like, what do I care about?
I want to come back to that because I think that's a powerful question. But I want to talk about one other thing in your college experience first before we get there. You talked about social support and relying on family. The other thing that, studies show is that having a strong social support system in college, right, wherever you are, is something that protects students from the hard parts. And not saying that you won't experience hard things, but it becomes easier to navigate. So, for example, I joined a group as soon as I got on campus. I joined the Chicanx Caucus, which is the Mexican American student organization. And I was unlucky that I had a really hard experience my first semester with some, like stuff that happened to friends. And it was that organization, right? The people that I had just met, we'd started going to meetings, but they all came to check in on me. They all came to make sure I was good. They told us how to navigate classes, who to ask for help, who the good professors were. And I really credit that org with helping me stay when things got hard, right? Like, these were people, there were seniors in there were juniors in there. And so it was really helpful to like hear from others. Did you find those groups? Do you feel like that was encouraged for you? Or was it more like everyone's on their own doing their own thing?
No, I think like you said, A&M, at least then, I imagine now, has a really good culture in terms of wanting to include you. But I think it's also important to consider like personality, and I consider myself an introvert.
Were you part of the 1% that doesn't participate in all the...
So it's kind of just like cherry on top, right? Like, you would think attending a school that's really big on inclusivity and like making you feel welcomed and having the whole orientation, that was a big resource available. But for me, as an introvert, I honestly kind of fell between the cracks, and I guess maybe I'm hoping people can relate to. I'm not I guess I would initially attend a social group or want to like go to a meeting. I kind of tend to like isolate. And I think that's what I mean about me not being aware of how doing that can alienate myself and even increase my risk even more of having challenges, because I didn't have the friend group that you did. I didn't have the social support in that sense. But I do want to know, now that you mentioned it, about the social support. So now that I'm a graduate student in counseling and I'm set to graduate in the spring, yes, I'm attending it here at UTRGV. It's the clinical mental health track. That is social support is a major component that all our evidence-based research talks about, because it can literally make the difference between someone improving their mental health and what recovery can look like for them. And that to me is mind-blowing, because a lot of people, I think, have the misconception of, medication or a specific evidence treatment or technique or modality.
The doctor will fix me.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing when you look at the studies, and it really all ties back to that idea of having that social support can
Yeah.
make the difference between someone being able to overcome adversity and the difference between what resilience can look like.
Mm-hmm.
That to me just basically is like, hey, hello, social support, we need that, we need each other. And I think that's also a big part of what we learned throughout the pandemic, right? Of like, hey, we are humans that
Yeah.
need to interact with each
We are
other.
social beings.
We are social beings, and we need that community. And I think that is a big reason of why I love what you and Phil are working on and creating that community, because I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's college, either while you're navigating pre or post, it's important for you to be plugged into a community that is going to check up on you, that cares.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is working towards a goal that ultimately wants to serve the community. You want to create opportunities for people. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you. I'm curious because, the phrase, we know better, we do better. You went through college and you made it, and I'm so impressed that you did it without being plugged in, right? Without having all of that social support, because I think that's incredibly difficult to do. How did you change that now that you're in grad school, right? Did you intentionally go and make sure that you were in study groups, or have you made community outside of school, right? How have you increased your social support so that this time around, from what I can see at least, it seems like you're not having as hard a time as you did your first time around?
Mm-hmm.
So what changes did you make to help make that happen?
I would say that post undergrad degree, I really took time to assess, one, what my values were, what I wanted to align myself with.
Yeah.
And that made a big game-changing difference for me, because I no longer felt the pressure to be someone that I was expected to.
Yeah.
I really took the time and opportunity to be honest with myself and say, if this was like the only choice that you could make in terms of like defining your future, are you going to be happy with it 10 years, 20 years down the road? I think that it's difficult as a young adult to conceptualize the future.
Yeah.
And that's also challenging part of college, because it's delayed gratification. And so I don't think, like you said, undercooked brains, our brains are not wired that way at that early to be able to anticipate and conceptualize what it looks like down the
you can think like, what am I wearing this Friday?
Exactly,
Not what am I going to be doing in 5 years?
Yeah, it goes as far as like maybe months ahead, but to make such a big decision. And because I recognize that, we're going back to my timeline. I graduated spring of 2020 during the COVID pandemic. It was still very strange. So that fall, I came back home, and I had applied to like 2 to 3 different graduate programs that were going online only.
Okay.
Because I really wanted to still stay in public health. Like that was my idea. Like I really found that serving to that capacity was something I was interested in. I just wasn't really sure what. So A&M still provided online programs because of the COVID for like epidemiology or
cool.
for health promotion, public policy, and also I think it was, can't remember the other. Oh yeah, occupational safety and health. And so OSHA, yeah.
You were almost OSHA?
Yeah, so
okay.
So I started a master's program in OSHA.
That's crazy.
I really did. I
can't imagine you walking into factories with like the hard hat and the vest and like.
Because in my head I was like, I kind of got to the idea of, I've already left Brownsville and I've already kind of gotten comfortable with that. And maybe this will create an opportunity for me to work elsewhere. Kind of expand my horizons a bit. But ultimately, again, because of the short window and because of the global pandemic, and because, again, I don't think I was at a point in my life where I had taken too much time to really process it. I felt rushed because I felt like, okay, you're graduating, that's amazing, but what's next? Like that question was looming of like, what are you going to do with your degree?
That's probably the scariest point of college, when you realize, like, when you start, you cannot fathom graduating. You're like, it's so far away, it's so long. And then I think around junior year, you start realizing, oh, it's around the corner and I haven't figured out what I want to do or how to get a job or how to apply or where to go. So yeah, it can feel really rushed. It could feel like this is too much to make a decision right now like this. So you started that program. Did you finish it?
I started the program, and again, I had another pivotal moment. It's like second semester is just that time for me where it's like,
I think it's the time for a lot of people because you're right. I think the first semester everyone's excited.
yeah, like, okay, I can do this. I
Yeah.
like it. Like, it interests me. But then ultimately, because a graduate degree is shorter than the 4-year period, it's usually 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
The turnaround time in terms of like internship and completing those requirements,
It's really fast.
exactly. And so I literally got to the point where after second semester during the summer, you go to your first internship. I went as far as interviewing for internships. I accepted an offer.
Okay.
I was already in line. It was going to be a paid internship. I had my offer letter, like everything was set. But I still, like, you know, that gut feeling when it's like that little voice inside saying, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what, how far are you going to go on, like,
in the wrong direction?
In the wrong direction. And again, I felt like, not again, like this overwhelming sense of shame, guilt, confusion of like, and mind you, graduate school often is not funded.
Yeah.
And so for this point, I had accepted loans. So I had made that financial decision, which now becomes a responsibility for me, right? And so now I'm making bigger decisions. And that's when I started realizing, okay, if I don't address this now, I'm going to let it get out of hand, where I'm going to invest a lot more money into a degree that I'm not even happy with. Like, why am I continuing this behavior of seeking? I don't know if it was maybe just the finances. I mean, OSHA can pay well depending on the site. I don't know if it was also like me wanting that validation for the title. Like, oh, you know what? This is kind of like...
You would have been so hated, bro.
Probably because I'm a stickler. So I'm going to be like, no, put your hard hat on. But ultimately, I made that decision and I was able to be honest with myself.
Yeah.
And I had a meeting with my advisor like the next week, and he was a person that I respected, a mentor, someone that had taken the time to guide me and navigate me through this process. And I was honest with them, and I told them, you know, I appreciate all the time that you spent and in guiding me, but I don't feel that this is a fit for myself. So if anything, I would want to encourage people to be comfortable in standing up for yourself in that way, of like not going through decisions or through programs or whatever other
the
career.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, like I don't think that you have to make a decision that you're not going to be happy with ultimately, because it's your life at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes moments when I just said it offhand, but the sunk cost fallacy is this idea that I've invested so much into this already, right? Or I'm in too deep to change my mind. And it's so hard because there is a financial calculation with college that you have to make sometimes of, yeah, I've done 2 semesters, 3 semesters, maybe I've taken out loans. But that if I'm not going to finish this, right? Or if I'm going to finish this and then I'm not going to want to work in it, then you're going to be investing a lot more time and money in that, right? Like there's the fallacy is that if we've already invested this much, we should just keep going. And the reason that's wrong is because you're going to have to invest a lot more and the result might still be the same. It might still be that you hate it at the end of the day. And now instead of 2 semesters worth of loans and consequences and such, you now have 3 years worth of that you've wasted. Right now, I don't think any time is wasted in school because you're always learning and you can use that knowledge elsewhere. But in a system where we pay for school and we pay a lot for school, I think the being honest part is so important, right? The recognizing this was a wrong choice and I have to pivot, and I should pivot sooner rather than later. You talked about going to your advisor twice now, right? You went in undergrad and you went in grad school. What was that experience like? How did you know to go to your advisor, right? How did that go?
So from my experience, registration requires that they approve your courses.
Okay.
And so that is kind of how I was aware of like, hey, I need to check in with them because they approve your plan of study or your course sequence,
Mm-hmm.
some people call it. And so I was aware that they were kind of the point of contact in terms of like your enrollment in the
Mm-hmm.
program. So I felt comfortable enough to reach out and kind of seek guidance because that's their job,
Yeah.
right? To advise you. And luckily I did have good advisors. I
Mm-hmm.
know that's not the case for everyone,
Yeah.
but they were able to lead with empathy and help me through the exit process because if you didn't know, you can't just stop attending. Like,
What?
it's, yeah, like, what?
They make you sign papers to stop doing something? That's crazy.
Yeah, like, so there's a whole process of like you basically, even in terms of the loans, like doing your exit surveys and like
Mm-hmm.
filling out whatever form
They
to
want to
say
make
like,
sure that you know how to pay your loans back.
yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I was the type of student back then where I didn't really care. I would just click through it like, yeah, whatever, I'll do this loan forgiveness thing later. Da, 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 da. Okay, good. And done. You know,
Yeah.
like I was like, that
I mean,
sounds
you
like
were
a
what,
future
like
problem.
22, 23?
Yeah, that's a future problem. What
Yeah.
am I gonna be doing worrying about that now? And so p- after I met with my advisor is when I really was like faced with the decision to face myself to be like, okay, like you said, this was the second time. I don't want to repeat this pattern.
Mm.
What is it that you want to do? Like I always told myself, if you got yourself somewhere, that's because you worked hard. And whatever you want to do, you can pursue it because ultimately you're the one that's going to be faced with having to do the whole process. Like whatever field you go into, you're the one that's going to have to wake up every day, go to your job, be
Mm-hmm.
invested. And I wanted to be a person that wasn't just like grouchy all the time or that I was
Hates
blaming
their job.
or blaming other people for my
Mm-hmm.
decisions because no one forces. Sometimes circumstances play a major role, right? But ultimately no one forces you to take certain decisions. And that's where I was fortunate enough to be able to pivot. And that is through all that experience about having to go through those challenges and having to withdraw and change, I came to finally the point I'm at now, which I'm really, really grateful that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to my counseling experience and understanding like what that looks like and at what capacity I can help people.
So, what did you decide, right? Because you talked about having to identify your values, having to figure out what you like, and having to figure out what you wanted to invest your time in. And I think that's something that not enough people consider in thinking of a career. This is what you do for at least 8 hours a day, right? That's a third of our lives. That's a lot of time spent doing a job. And hopefully you're picking something that you enjoy and like. Now, I'm not of the belief that you have to have a dream career or that living your dreams has to happen through your career. Sometimes it's just what gets you the money to do the fun things, right? But you were thinking about it from this perspective, right? Of I'm going to be investing a lot of time, a lot of energy. I want it to be value aligned. So what did you arrive at and how did you arrive at that?
I got to that point because I really had to introspect and I really had to take time to sit with myself to reflect on what were the motivations behind my behavior because I can honestly say at up until that point, even having finished the program, I felt like I was taking on this persona of like someone that I thought that I had to be given my background. Like I was influenced by, oh, you have to be, high achieving and you have to be like pursuing the best internships. You have to be doing the best things,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you make a certain salary, like making your family proud. But when you remove that pressure and when you kind of just take time to ask yourself, like, what do I
Yeah.
want to do? Ultimately also, what am I good at? Right? Because I think there's a difference there
Yeah.
when it comes to career counseling. There's a misconception like, oh, my interests will align
With what
with
I'm
what
good
I'm
at.
good at. Yeah.
That's
And
not
not always the
Nope.
case. No. So I think it's once I sat down with myself and I was able to say, okay, you know what? I like writing. I like communicating with people. I like serving others. I'm now learning about my own mental health and what that looks like. I did some research across programs and ultimately it aligned with a decision that allowed me to be close to my social support because again, I could have applied to programs that were in Austin or out of state or etc. But ultimately, I recognized that
That
something
wasn't for you.
that's not for me, and it might be for some people, but in terms of like my nuclear family and the people that I care about and the life that I want to live, for me that means being here, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't mean that won't ever maybe branch out or like collaborate with people that are out of state, but it means like for me in the life that I want to live, I'm happy with that decision for myself.
Now, I've known you for the time that you've been deciding on what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you were thinking Houston and you were going to move. So, was that you falling back into the expectations, or was that a genuine, like, oh, I think I can handle this now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think that it really ultimately aligns with me sticking with the future that I can see for myself,
Mm-hmm.
because a master's degree is usually 2 to 3 years, and a doctoral program, depending on your fields of study, can be anywhere between 3 to 5, depending on the
Yeah, people
dissertation.
don't realize how long it takes to become a doctor.
Yeah, so same process in terms of like residency and having to go through all of this. And so I will say that because I'm now in a field that I enjoy, that time length of like 5 years doesn't
Doesn't
feel
feel
as
as.
daunting.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it's like I'm reading papers that I care about, and I like the content, so it's different. But ultimately now in the stage of life that I'm in, I got married last year.
Yeah.
My parents are still in town. My whole nuclear family is here.
Mm-hmm.
Given the circumstances with my personal life in terms of like my grandparents aging, health issues, health concerns, I really was faced with a decision of making a choice that aligned with, again, the what I would be okay with within the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So finishing this program, and it's still a process. I think people think like, oh, you kind of just apply and you get accepted or not. It's a process of like interviewing and
Yeah.
submitting the documents, seeing what tests are required, and it's a whole investment, like you said. So I think ultimately, if you're going to be still investing time and energy,
It
it
might as well be.
something that that you're going to be
Mhm.
happy with, or that you enjoy or can see yourself doing.
Yeah, I think a little lore about me that I don't know if you know, but when I started college, I was convinced I was going to be a foreign service officer. I was going to be CIA, super secret spy, going because I really wanted to travel,
Okay.
right? And in my head, I needed to get a career that would let me travel.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there weren't influencers yet, not quite like there are now. So I was like, what careers travel? Well, the CIA goes everywhere. I didn't realize the CIA goes to like the worst places.
You're
Right?
like
I wasn't going to get to go to Rome and it
the
like,
fancy.
no, I was going to be in like a tent somewhere. And I had an advisor who asked me, she was like, okay, you are 22, graduating college, right? Like helping me envision this. She's like, do you want to get married? It's like, well, yeah, obviously I want to get married. And she's like, do you want to have kids? It's like, duh, like, of course I do. And as you get older, you realize these are actual questions for a reason. But she's like, you're gonna be sent on a mission and your husband and kids can't come. What are you gonna do then? I was like, oh, there's so much more that goes into a career
Mm-hmm.
than you're even thinking at 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful that someone was honest with me at the time of like, you want to go put yourself in a tent in a desert, not communicating with anyone, and in a stage of life where you're growing personally too, right? Because I think that's the thing that not a lot of people consider. It's like, not only do you have to pick your career, but you also then have to make it fit in this puzzle with everything else that you want, right? Like, yeah, you could want to become a doctor, but that means that you're probably not having kids until you're in residency, right? Which is when you're 28, 29, 30. And, that takes a lot to figure out and to be able to put it together. So I really admire that you were able to like sit down and be like, okay, I'm in this stage of life, what matters to me here and now, and being able to make that fit. Because for me, it had to be someone else being like, yo, that doesn't make sense.
You're
You
like, hey,
like
hold up. Yeah.
the thing you say you want, but the other things you say you want don't work together in this puzzle. And I think it takes like a lot of personal insight to understand that, like, hey, if I want support going through this program and I also want to be near family, it doesn't make sense for me to go so far away from where they're at, right? There's like a logical brain, and I think your brain's probably fully cooked now, right? That also helps you see that. But I think the other thing I'm curious, therefore, is, do you have an idea of what comes next besides the doctorate program, right? Like, what else, or what do you want to do with that once you're Dr. Chavez, right?
So I will say, like, I'm really glad that the Valley has grown, not just in terms of like resources and academic, like it's growing so fast with, all the different opportunities. That's the right word. Opportunities. Yeah. Because now there's a lot more programs that are offered, even through the university. Yeah. And that is creating an opportunity for me to be able to make that dream come true and not have to give up my career aspirations while still, continuing my academic journey. Granted, it's in Edinburgh, so it's not like far, but there's still that consideration of like driving and
maybe you're moving.
Who knows? Stay tuned. So, but I would say, like, even post doctoral program, I really admire how you're plugging into the community and giving back. And I think that's something that I want to commit to. I want to help and serve at whatever capacity is needed. Especially, I know nonprofits do a lot and strive to create access. And in the mental health arena, access is really important because not everyone has the same information or the same understanding or the same ability to be able to understand what their options are. Yeah. And especially when it comes to mental health, I think that it's really important that there's platforms and spaces that create an opportunity for us to have conversations around it.
So this is an exercise I did when I was a freshman in undergrad. And it stuck with me because I don't think we do it enough. My professor had us imagine what our dream school would look like, because we were in an education program, right? So we got this big white poster and it was like, okay, draw your dream school. No restraints, no money considerations, no state regulations, not even like environmental. Like, I remember we built ours out of all glass. And in hindsight, that's a terrible like architectural decision. But it was so hard at first to work outside of restraints because you're so used to like, well, if money allows, right? Or if...
What are the limits?
Yeah, the limits. So I want to see, right, in a world without any restrictions, what would you want that service to look like? What do you envision in terms of mental health for the Valley, for Brownsville, right? What does it look like in a world where we're not limited by anything?
Not limited by anything. Wow, that's interesting. That would be nice to consider. I would say it would look like, one, integrated primary care behavioral health.
Can you say more on what that means?
So it's the idea of you being able to access mental health services in primary care settings. So what that means is when you go, let's say, to an annual checkup or visit, a behavioral health consultant will be available to just do a quick check-in. Think of it like a 30-minute consultation where they're able to just...
So I go to the doctor to check my blood pressure, but someone's also doing a check-in to make sure that emotionally I'm doing okay.
Yeah, and so this movement is already underway, but there's a lot of pushback again because of the stigma, because of funding, because of et cetera restrictions. But I think that idea of us being a society and a community that understands that we have a mind-body connection and that it's very important that you consider how your mental health and stress and just illnesses like anxiety and depression that can be crippling have a major impact on your physical health. And often if you're able to target that mental component, it can give way and give room for you to be able to heal. And ideally it would look like that, like in a world where everything, was available, we would have integrated health. It would be free, and we would have like centers where you can go up and ask for resources, or maybe more nonprofit organizations that are geared towards providing counseling services. Granted that they were funded, right? Granted that
where there's no restrictions here, right?
Yeah, everyone has a good salary that they deserve. And so that would be like ideally what our community would look like, because I think if we provide access and opportunity for mental health resources, then a lot of the pressure that we face alone will be mitigated, because we won't feel isolated, alienated anymore. We will know that we're not the only ones that go through those type of struggles.
Yeah, and I think as a teacher, I had to refer a few students out for services, and I saw just how little counselors we have in the Valley. I think there were like 3 offices that we could send, especially teenagers to. And they were always full, right? We would call to see if we could get them an appointment soon, and it was just always so far ahead. So I also like this idea of like just many more counselors, right? We have perfectly trained professionals that can do this work, and that can do it well. And I like that you highlighted the opportunities we have now here in the Valley, because I do think that's something we've seen a huge change in the last 10 years. I was interning here back in 2015, and I remember I was interning for the congressman, and I got to sit in on meetings where they were talking about all the programs that were coming to the university. And I remember being like, oh man, that seems so far away though, 10 years from now. Like, what, by the time they get here, but the time comes, right? And I think that's something that whether you're pursuing school, whether you're getting a certification, whether you're thinking about doing, a doctorate, starting a business, time will pass anyway. So we might as well get started on the things we want to do and get moving in that direction. And I think the university and all the growth that it's had is a very good example of that. We now have a football team. We now have a medical school. We have this clinical psychology degree. And not only that, but we also have funding for it. And I think that's something that not a lot of people understand. But I know in the previous podcast I mentioned the Luminary Scholarship is a full ride now for students that can turn into also pursuing advanced degrees. They also have a program that allows, I think, I'm not going to say the name because I'm going to get it wrong, but I'll link it in the description if I
was
remember.
About to say that. Look at the description.
Link in bio.
Link and subscribe.
But it's a program that now at UTRGV, you get a scholarship when you come in as a freshman. And if you say that you intend to be a doctor, it also pays for medical school. Now, not a lot of people get it. It's still a small program, but I think that's so cool because there's so many med schools in the nation that don't offer financial aid. And we're one of the first that do, right? I'd say one of the first 10 that really are committed to making it affordable for people to become the people that we need in our community, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like now that you mention it, creating opportunities for people like me who may not have that social support moving away, maybe they'll have the opportunity to stay here and continue their journey academic, professionally, to be able to be successful and not have to go through that tough transition that most of us do.
Yeah, I think that would be like, if I were still envisioning, right, like the future I imagine is everyone being able to access knowledge here, right, and access that here. What is something you would give, like an advice you would give to either younger you or to students going through this process now? And envision talking to someone, maybe from a Brownsville high school, used to doing really well, or used to at least being able to figure it out and work their way out of something. What advice would you give either about figuring out what you want to do, putting in the work to do it, changing your mind, anything in that?
Advice that I would give, I would say that it really comes down to staying true to yourself, but also like giving yourself an opportunity to go through change and kind of trying to stay open-minded, because I think as humans, it's normal and part of our development. I think sometimes we have an idea, an expectation of what life should look like, but often that changes.
Yeah.
So to kind of like stay true to what you care about, what you value, and also just try to get involved to maybe shadow and get a better sense. And that's what internships come down to, because it gives you that day in and out of this is what realistically my life would look like.
Yeah.
But also I would say to challenge those negative beliefs about yourself, that negative self-talk that we tend to have, where sometimes we don't even try because we're already saying that we're not worthy, or like, I don't want to apply because I know I'm not going to get it. Like, don't.
We always tell our students, let them tell you no.
Yeah.
Right? Don't count yourself out before you've even applied. Apply, and if they don't want you, they'll tell you.
Yeah, and I think that can also be an opportunity for you to consider, well, where else can I invest my time in, or maybe take that as a chance to reflect and say, during this period that I'm waiting, what can I gain and how can I develop professionally and personally? Yeah, I don't think sometimes we see a no as such a negative thing, but it can also, like you said, really be seen as an opportunity because it gives us that chance to pivot.
Yeah, embracing the no as a chance to pivot. I think that's such a powerful piece of advice. And I want to also emphasize this idea of staying true to yourself and the you that you are now, right? Not the you that you were a year ago, not the you that you think you should be, but like, who am I actually in this moment? So that you're not making decisions based on like either a past self that, well, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a doctor, so I should do it. But who you actually are right now and what those values are. I think that's really powerful advice. I think the other thing I want to know is what or where do you go to find hope and to find inspiration for what comes next?
For me, I would say that my family and that social support is really important, and they inspire me to want to continue growing. And I would also say it's my faith, that community support that I receive like locally, and the understanding of the direction that I want to take my life. I think meaning making is really important to finding your purpose, and that's often tied to what truly matters to you the most. So that's what inspires me, and understanding that ultimately, you are here where you're at now, but that's because of decisions that your family has taken and your parents at some point took. And so I think living a life that leads with gratitude and wanting to be intentional is really important. And that can be so powerful because whatever you do, if you do it intentionally and genuinely, then that can bring what you consider as happiness, because I think it's so subjective. So I think it's powerful what you said about you deciding for yourself, because that can look like so many different things for different people.
Yeah. So do you have any questions about education, about the system, or any questions for me about anything?
I would say, what have you, now that you're like working with Real Progress, what would you say is something that you've noticed in terms of like the current today challenges that are like, maybe is there a trend? Because I know my experience, but that kind of was 2017-ish. It's been a while, almost 10 years.
There are many challenges. I think the hardest part right now is that everything is changing because we have a new administration and we don't know. I think the hardest part is, so I have been studying education for the last 10 years or so, because I really started to dig in when I was like 16 and trying to figure out what is happening. Why did I have to come to this school in order to get these opportunities? And I've learned a lot about how the system works and how to navigate it and how to manage the challenges, how to help others do it. And I think the hardest part now is not even knowing what those challenges are or what they're going to be in the next month. We're getting executive orders, we're getting court decisions, we're getting reversals of policies. And I've even gotten into the point where I've talked to university officials and they don't even know from day to day what's happening. So I just worked with a student, for example, who received an email saying, hey, I don't think we can fund your scholarship anymore. And what do you go into college and you expect that a lot of that hard work is done the first time you apply to get these scholarships, to do these things. And a lot of them say they're guaranteed for 4 years, right? Or they're guaranteed for X, Y, or Z. And now we're seeing reversals on that.
That's unfortunate.
And I think we're in a place where I'm really grateful that I'm in my doctoral program while this is happening, because I get to talk about it with my peers and try to like brainstorm together, like how do we respond to these challenges. And I think one of the things that's really been helpful is that we're going to take it one day at a time, and we're going to make the next right move, right? And I think that's something that can even apply to the challenges that you faced, right? You do not have to decide what you're going to do for the next 5 years right now. Right? You just have to take the next right step. You just have to do the next right thing. And right is subjective, right? It's not like there's this, Scantron multiple choice test that's being graded, but it's okay, if my scholarship is being taken away because of policy decisions X, Y, or Z, my instinct could be to rage against the system and go be like, we should change the policy. Great. We can't do that right now. Right? Like, that's not realistically what's going to happen.
The process of advocacy and going through, the legislative changes.
It's a long process. So what can you immediately do next? Well, you can go talk to your financial aid office and see what other options there are. We can pivot and look for other scholarships. You just have to take the next step, right? Keeping in mind the big picture, but doing the little things that are going to help you navigate it in the meantime. So I think the challenge is that we have a lot of changes coming all at once, and some that we don't even know are coming. But the first we cry, then we solve the problem. We can cry about it, and then we have to say, okay, but what can I do next, right? And what do I do next? And I think that your story has been a lot of what do I do next and what's the next right step. And I think that's also what we have to keep doing even now with these challenges, because it doesn't really matter what the challenge is, right? We're going to have to face them in the same way. We're going to have to just keep saying, okay, this is the problem in front of me. Now what's next, right? Now how do I move? So I'd say that. I wish I had a more precise answer. And a year ago, I would have had like very bullet pointed, this is what's wrong with the system. But we're just in a time of like, the Department of Ed shutting down.
What about kind of like how you asked me, what have students shared that has helped them navigate those stressors and the uncertainty that they may face with funding?
I think the thing that Brownsville students have specifically, and I think it's probably a Valley culture thing, we're really creative, right? We are really creative, and like our families are really creative. For example, my parents grew up, or when we were growing up, when money was tight, we'd go sell at the flea market, right? And that was our way of hustling. And at some point, we even sold bolis, like out of a hielera, and we would go and we'd sell, and we'd make $100, and that was enough for whatever it is we were looking for. And I think that not necessarily that everyone should go sell bolis, right? But that spirit of creativity of like, financial aid is really important. And this is the way that typically we would do things. But when the problems become weirder or like less predictable, we kind of have to become more creative in our problem solving. And I think the students I've seen be successful have been really creative in their problem solving, right? Like, I'm going to go all the traditional routes, and I'm also going to maybe go talk to people that can sponsor this, right? Or I'm going to start selling my creations, my jewelry making, right? Maybe I have a hobby and I'm going to find a way to get myself through it that is maybe outside of the system. And I think that's something that is a really big cultural asset we don't often think about, is our creativity and our hustler spirit. Like, we're going to find a way, and you just have to trust that you will find a way. And I think the other thing is patience. I think we often feel this pressure of like, I have to graduate in 4 years because that's what everyone does.
Yeah.
And the students that can take a step back and say, you know what, I actually need a break for a second because I need to save money, or because I need to take care of family right now, or I need to do something else, but I'm going to come back, right? So it's that patience combined with the determination to keep going, really, really help, right? Like, I need to do this, but it's temporary, right? And it's with, what do I do while I'm waiting, right? How do I make use of that time? And I think, patience, creativity, and determination are like the magic recipe for not just success, but like being able to keep going even when there are these really big challenges
that often we can't control or don't
that
really have,
and that are outside of us, right?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't choose to be living in 2025 amidst all these changes. Our students aren't choosing to go to college in this moment. This is what's next for them, and they just have to make it work. I really am a fan of Project Runway. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but in my head, and sometimes I'll put this meme in the group chat for our students, it's Tim Gunn, and Tim Gunn's the host.
Okay.
With the white hair, and he's so like cool.
Is this the fashion show one or the model one?
The fashion show
Okay.
one, where you make things out of like random stuff.
Yeah, I remember.
And they're always on a time crunch, and someone's always freaking out at the end.
Yeah.
And what does he say to them? He's like, make it work. Right? You just got to make it work. And I think that's the right spirit, right? It's like, sometimes we get angry about the things that are happening to us, and that's okay. You can feel your emotions. You can be angry about it, but you still have to make it work.
Yeah.
Right? You still have to figure out a way to get out of it. You still have to figure out a way to get what you want done. And so that spirit of like, you have 30 seconds left and this model is half naked on the runway, like, make it work, drape something over her, throw something on, right? But like, figure it out. And then the next challenge, right? You can do better. But right now you just have to move, right? You just have to keep going. So I think that's the spirit that we need to have.
I think also ultimately you mentioned an important point about as students, because I do want to say, like, now that I hear you talking about like what it means to be a student, what your experience is like, that is a big part of our identity when it comes to an academic journey. You know, we spend so much time studying, doing all this work, and so we sometimes are tied to this idea of like, oh, the timeline of like, I want to not be delayed. But I think it's so interesting when you think about that it's subjective, like on whose timeline, like you're on your own journey and process, and like people come back to degrees years after they do a career change midpoint, like midway through their life. And I think that that's also like important to consider, because if you got yourself there to begin with, then who's to say you can't continue at a later point in time if that's what works better for you then. And I think that also would have been some good advice for myself of like, maybe that time off will get you to gain some insight to avoid making decisions that just harm you instead. Or like, I wouldn't advise someone to, I wouldn't say, hey, go get the loan and you'll deal with it later. Like, I'm gonna have to, you know?
We'll talk about financial aid and loans at another point. But yeah, that's, you know, taking your time, and you're on your own timeline. What do you do for fun?
Well, I think we both know that answer. We train. I train. I do also spend a lot of quality time, or try to, with my family. I think that's another important component to the mental health kind of talk we were having. For me, physical activity and exercise and moving my body is fun, and I'm learning to define that.
Is it? Because we just had a workout this morning that was not fun.
I'm embracing that. And so I think it's like important to define, because, you know, as students also, I'm sure you can relate to, well, now even post, well, you're still a student actually. So your time management, it's a crunch of like, you have short windows of time. So during this season of life, that will be fun until
I have to define that as fun, because I know it's good for me. And so there's also, I think you talked about negative self-talk. This is positive self-talk, right? This is the things that are good for me are also fun, and I just need to like believe that.
And I'm not saying, I'm not pro toxic positivity that I'm saying like, oh, you can't give yourself downtime. But I think ultimately, like, when you're working towards a goal, you really want to be intentional with how much time you're spending on social media, or how much time you're spending consuming media that ultimately, like, that's okay. But what I say is like, time it, you know, like, be aware of how much, instead of it turning into this slippery slope of binge watching like a whole season or something. Maybe, you know, if it's scheduled,
every once in a while we can
there you go,
schedule binging time. For the most part, you like to train, you like to spend quality time with your family.
I like to bake. I'm a foodie, which is ironic because it goes against the whole physical activity.
I don't think it does. I think we've learned in this
to redefine what being a foodie means. It doesn't mean eating harmful foods, but foods that are fun, trying new combinations. Yeah, just being outdoors. Like currently, that's what fun looks like to me right now. And I think it's gonna change eventually. I think also it's important, like for me to accept if I want to take on this endeavor of continuing academics and what that would look like, and being part of
Mm-hmm.
the community. That also means like my work life balance at some point has to redefine what my activities would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I want to work on because I want to embrace it instead of feeling like I'm,
Burdened.
yeah, exactly. I think that's like against working against me because it's
Mm-hmm.
just going to cause more distress
Mm.
if I'm feeling like I'm forcing myself to do some or things, I
Yeah.
kind of want to be aware of it because I think sometimes we can trick ourselves to saying, oh, you know what, no, it's fine, until the burnout happens,
Yeah.
or until, which is very much so a real experience of college students.
Yeah.
Even now, like as a grad student, burnout, I've experienced burnout. You can prevent it, but
Yeah.
sometimes I think it comes with the space. And so like understanding that and like making time for your fun is really important.
Yeah, I had another great piece of advice when I was starting college is you are a plant. You need sunshine, you need water, and you need good food, right? And if you have those three things, then you're able to actually grow and do the things that you want.
Hmm.
And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about as your fun, right? It's the good food, the movement, the light, the water, the all these things that help you be healthy also allow you to grow,
I like
right?
that.
So
Yeah, that's
your
good.
fun can help you grow.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is going to be our conversation for today. Thank you so much for joining me and for being here as, we start our podcast. I'm very excited for this. And is there anything else, any last thoughts you'd like to share? Anything else that you want to
No,
tell the
thank you
audience?
for having me. I'm really excited for Real Progress. I think that it's really important, that we share the information that you guys are working on,
Mm,
that people are aware of how you're helping or wanting to help, so that people and students can get plugged in to get the
mm-hmm,
resources that they need. I think it's important for them to capitalize on opportunities they may not have known
mm-hmm.
of. And yeah, I really hope that you guys get the funding, the resources, whatever you need to be able to make a bigger impact in
Keep
the
growing.
community. Yeah. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Real Progress, the podcast. If you want to plug into those resources that I was just talking about, you can check us out at rioprogress.org. We'll have the link somewhere for you to click on as well. And then we're also on Instagram, TikTok, all the platforms. And then be sure to subscribe so you can hear when our next episode drops. Thank you all so much for watching this podcast and following along with us. If you really liked it, please feel free to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere that you might be listening to this. And if you want more information about the work that we do, you can go to realprogress.org or you can follow us on socials at Real Progress.